We have a lot of, we can go in a lot of different directions. Hello, everybody. I have a special guest today on my live. She'll be here in a minute. Her name is Taegan Gates, and we will be chatting with Taegan for the duration of the live. Hey, Radu. Excellent. Thank you for the likes. Appreciate it. All right. So Taegan will be here in a few minutes, I'm sure. Let's get the likes up. Appreciate the likes, the follows, all that good stuff. There she is. Taegan, I'm going to invite you. Here we go.
Oh, I need to turn my camera on. There we go. Hello.
Taegan, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. It's a beautiful morning over here on the West Coast. How is it over there?
Also beautiful weather here this morning.
Amazing.
Beautiful. I'm playing tennis tonight, so I'm saving my energy.
Fun. I love that.
So we have. I will wait till some more folks show up, but we have a broad range of things we didn't talk about on our agenda here, but we have really we can go in a lot of different directions. What are some thoughts you have? And then there are a couple of things that I want to talk about, but I'd love to hear just some of the things on your mind, and then we can maybe get an agenda together before others.
Totally.
Yeah, we'll get there'll be about 30 or 40 people here in about 5 minutes. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was wondering what you wanted to do today, because I was like, okay, well, we've had like a week in between, so I wonder if he has like a bunch more questions like ready to go. But I think that, I mean, we can talk about the month of September in general, as it's September 1st today. It's going to be significant energetically, and there's lots of shifts happening. So even if we can just get into like the energy a little bit in terms of what we can expect, and I'm sure that there will be lots of questions that are coming from that. I was kind of just tuning in briefly for the specific collective that's going to be watching this video, and they brought through just a couple of insights for some of the people, so we can get into that maybe a little bit later, and I'll just like run through the things that they wanted me to share with the people that are watching, and then other than that, I don't, whatever flows.
I'm interested. I'm most interested. We can start talking about it now. I'm most interested like in your lifestyle, because the way you channel, you're very like free flowing. You just let it come through, and you don't judge, and you don't have any tension. It doesn't look like. How do you maintain such a balanced lifestyle? And I know that has to be intentional, right? I know it doesn't just happen that way. You've kind of softened yourself over time and found your own balance. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I think to answer that question, I need to kind of reflect on how I got to this level of channeling. And it definitely began, like when I first started doing intuitive readings, the first ones that I was doing was in like a Reiki context. So I was doing energy healing, and then I just noticed that I would mostly have claircognizance, so the clear knowing, the downloads coming through. And I always tell people, like at this point, and as I've kind of taught classes since then, that self-doubt is our biggest barrier. And so that was me I got attuned, and then I was doing sessions, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Like I got so nervous, and I didn't feel, I got so nervous about the idea of like doing a session with somebody and like things not coming, that I just didn't do it. And I stopped myself for like a year, and then I went back to it at a certain point. About a year later, I was part of a yoga lineage at that point, and we were doing, we had like a booth at a festival where we were teaching yoga, and they asked me if I wanted to do Reiki on the side. And so I was just doing like free Reiki sessions the entire festival. And I was like, oh, I can do this. So the self-doubt got out of the way at that point, and I was like, okay, no, I'm actually really good at this. And I think part of it, like it did come naturally once I started to actually believe that it was possible, believe that I could do it, and allowed it to be fluid. But going back to like when I first started, I, like most people, I think expected things to be very prominent, like within the space of receiving messages. I wanted somebody else's voice in my head that was going to be really clear. I wanted, you know, full movies playing out. And then as you refine your internal landscape, as you let go of the layers, as you clear the space, then you realize, well, actually, then you are more and more attuned to the subtle sensations that are happening in your own body that are actually just connected to the body, connected to the energetic, connected to the emotional space, that it allows it to be easier for you to receive the other subtle messages that are potentially coming from the external. So I really think that my clarity of channeling has been this like consistent process of letting go constantly and continually, paying attention to the subtlety within myself, and then also, you know, allowing space for the subtlety externally to come in as well.
I love that, and I want to talk about that because I struggle, and I'm sure I speak for most people. I don't hear voices. I'm not telepathic. You say I have angel guides. You probably see them right now. I don't think they're there. Like, I don't know. I don't see. I'm not like that yet. I've heard my body talk to me. Like, I've been hungry and I've felt this thing. Like, don't do that. You know, like you say yes to the yes, say no to the no. There is an inner knowing, and you're clearly, the body has its own intelligence. Clearly, the light has its own consciousness. But yet you and folks like you feel it and are able to kind of stay with it and see where it came from and see what it wants to say and see where it wants to go. Whereas maybe we all have it. I think that's what you're going to tell me. We all have it to a sense, to a degree, but how do you just, as you said it, you just got to clear space, let go, stay with it, follow the thread and see where that intelligence is coming from.
And I think initially, like, it was very, 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 very difficult for me to receive like messages for myself at first. It only came through when I was doing sessions on other people. So when I was tapped into the Reiki energy, which in itself is a high frequency channel of energy. So when you're doing Reiki, for the people that don't know that process, you are activating certain symbols that you have been attuned to, which connects you with Reiki energy. And Reiki is just the Japanese word for life force energy. So you are connecting with source energy. And so it's creating a clarity of channel. And then when you're doing that and you're connecting in with another person's energy body, it becomes more objective. Because the problem with us trying to read ourselves, especially when we don't have a lot of practice, is that it's not objective. And so we think that, you know, we are biasing things. We think that we're bringing in our own, you know, subjective experiences. And we probably are, because we haven't fine-tuned the ability to receive those subtleties. And so again, it was kind of this process of like working on other people. And then when I noticed, when I was connecting intentionally to other people's bodies and I was connecting in with certain chakra areas or certain areas of their body, I would be getting specific messages. And the types of messages would be like localized to these different energy centers that are associated with specific emotions, specific things. And so a process kind of underwent with that. And then after that, so I did Reiki first, and then the Akashic record readings, and then just the straight up channeling came later. But with the Akashic records, it was the same thing. So that was the point when I started to be able to really receive messages from my guides. And again, it's about I had to create that channel. So I had to use the Akashic records prayer to create an energetic bridge between myself and the dimension of consciousness where information just exists. So the Akashic records isn't like an astral location or like a library. It's just a dimension where everything is accessible. So again, utilizing the prayer, I got to connect. That was the point where I really started to be able to connect in with my guides and be able to receive messages. And I had that initial kind of understanding of what it feels like to receive messages because I had been working on other people. And so then I could open up the records and information would come through. And I remember like the first time I opened up the records, I'd be like, okay, so this is going to feel the same way that this other information feels. And so I knew what to look for. I knew what to feel for. And then it was just to continue. And then as soon as you are tuning into something regularly, energy flows where intention goes, or however the saying says. So
in your past, you kind of built this up. You had a little bit of it. You kind of sensed it. You knew it. You wanted to do Reiki, and you wanted to channel the energy. And then you just did the work, right? You just did it every day, cleared space, sensitized to it, so that there's really no shortcut. It's not like you just woke up one day and people were talking to you.
I always tell people, and to like preface what I'm about to say, there are people that just wake up and it's on one day. Like sometimes like that happens, but I always tell people it is a muscle. You can't, get a 6-pack without going to the gym. You can't like become a psychic or channel with like a clear channel without like progressively doing the work and building the muscle to do so. And I also always say that spiritual development and intuitive development are two halves of the same coin. You cannot evolve consciousness wise without also evolving your subtle perception, because you're increasing your perception of subtlety within yourself. And so even if it doesn't feel like you have the ability to connect into it, it's just on the other side of this, and it will naturally increase. Like if you read the Yoga Sutras, I'm pretty sure Patanjali's talking about yogic, what does he call them? Like yogi powers or something like that. He talks about how as your consciousness evolves, you're naturally going to be able to not only like manipulate energy, but be able to receive those downloads and insights. All of those like Hindu saints were like able to like do miracles, and that's for no other reason other than like consciousness evolves for you to be able to see that you well, first of all, are the creator, so you have access to all of the information. Because as soon as you know that you have access to all the information, you do. And so it comes through easier and easier.
All right. I'm going to have to put a light on here. Sorry. Hold on. Excuse me. There we go. I think one of the things that it's really interesting because if I can generalize, I think you've come from this information top down. Like you understand this multidimensional thing, this energy thing from the top down. Since I don't have those same perceptions, I've come at it over the last 20 and 30 years from the bottom up, from studying the ancient scriptures, from studying. And about 20 years ago, all of a sudden, because of the internet, thousands of books that were impossible to find. Maybe one day find it in a bookstore, 30 years ago. This is a good book. But now you can go on the internet and you can search and you can see many of these books, ancient transcripts and translations. And so I've come at it from the bottom up. I built my own dimensional model. You're seeing it through a window. You don't see the whole thing, I'm sure, but you see it through your own portal. And so you've seen it that way. And I think it's really interesting because we're really saying the same things, but I say it from a more utilitarian point of view. You say it from a more feminine surrendering point of view. Right. And I say it from like a checklist. If you want to do this, like you say, you have to build your muscles. You have to actually do it. I want to ask you a question that I get all the time. I want to hear your answer, and then I'll add my own thoughts. But I think a lot of people out there have the same question. How do you deal with negative family members or negative negative sources in your immediate life? How do you deal with that? And I have my own thoughts, and I want to hear yours as well.
Well, I think it is dependent on context, because I think that honestly my answer to this is probably not going to feel accessible to everybody, but my whole worldview is basically wrapped around the idea that you say yes to yes and you say no to no's, and the things that aren't in alignment you want to limit your time and access to, because they have real like physiological impacts on you, physiological, mental, spiritual, emotional impacts on you. And you can do all of the clearing, all of the grounding, all of the shielding, energetic protection and energetic hygiene that you want. But the reality is, if you're at a certain vibration and you're interacting with things that are of a certain vibration, you're going to get pulled down to you're going to pull them up and you're going to get pulled down. And if you're doing that on a consistent basis, it's really, really, really hard to stay at that higher level vibration. And so, like I said, it's not possible for everybody to just completely be like, and it's not that you need to, cut these people off necessarily. I haven't and don't. It's more just like you're limiting, you're just paying attention to the kind of energy that you are allowing in your space. And so if it is energetically draining on you consistently, you don't need to continue to allow those things to be in your external environment. And I don't. So that's my answer. And I know that there are a lot of people that have immediate family members that they just cannot, that's not a possibility for them. And I totally acknowledge and respect that decision. And really it's just about I would say mitigating time, implementing more self-care practices, making sure that you are utilizing it as a spiritual practice. So if there are triggers coming up, doing the work that's coming up that's allowing for these things to happen. But on a soul level, contract level, a lot of this can be karmic too, which means that on a higher self level, you have created contracts with certain individuals that are designed to mirror these things back to you. And sometimes the lesson involves saying no to continually allowing these things in your energetic space. So I think it's very contextual.
I also agree. Everyone's situation is different. And so any answer that you give or I give is not going to resonate with everyone, but it will resonate with someone. So my general advice, here's my thought. What you really want from your family or the people around you is what you really want. All you really want is just space to be yourself. If you have space, that's all you need, right? They're on their own journey, but as long as they give you the space. Now, if they don't give you the space, then like you say, it becomes emotional, physiological, etc. The other thing that I say is, do you ever see like those lights, those fluorescent lights, and there's a dead moth in it?
Yeah.
And all you see is the dead moth. All your attention is on the dead moth, but you look around, the whole room is lit. So you've got to shift your awareness from the things you don't have. I don't have the freedom to be myself with this person, but look at this. I have 99.9% other things that I free. So shift your awareness away from the negative limitation. And then the third thing is to stop expecting them to be supportive. They're not going to be supportive. I know a lot of people out here feel this. This is a real thing in most of our lives. Even if you have a normal relationship, as you start to ascend, you become different, and it creates a tension between the other person, and they want to, pull you down or stop you or question you or tell you you're crazy. So I think you, number one, have to stop expecting them to help you and stop making that so important. And then the last thing is you have to stop trying to fix them and explain to them and correct them and make them, change them. As I always say, look how hard it is to change yourself, and you want to change. To think that you're going to tell that person to stop being the way they are is not realistic. And I think the biggest thing is just to stop expecting help and appreciate the space that you do have. Granted,
Totally.
there are people who don't have space and are in terrible situations, but most people who ask that question, really, if they just stopped spending so much of their energy projecting and being part of the problem, and they would just enjoy the space that they do have. So I hope that helps folks, because I know that that's one of the most common questions is people want to change themselves. They want to transform. They want to let go of all this stuff, unplug from all the third dimensional stuff, but they feel like they're being blocked by some outer source. But it's not. So that's a really important question. What are your thoughts again? I'll give you a chance.
Yeah, the guides actually pretty much say exactly that when they bring through channeled messages about it. It's the reality from their point of view is that everybody is projecting their own individualized version of reality. So we're all experiencing our own individual version of reality. And so people aren't going to receive the message until they're ready to receive it. People aren't going to change until they're ready to receive it. And so I think that you are dead on about, like, you don't really have the ability to change anything. And so your expectation and your like attempt to change something because you are uncomfortable with the external reality and you want something that's different, first of all, is putting you out of alignment, because your expectations are creating, internal suffering. And the reality is that, again, like you said, they're on their individual journey and they need to go through the necessary lesson learning that is on their path for them. And you likely just aren't on the same path or the same place on the path. And that's okay. And the best thing that you can do is to focus on yourself and to focus on your own internal work and your own internal healing. And really, that's like the best way to, showcase the things that you've been doing. If your self-healing and your inner work is creating massive change, like the people around you feel that and they notice that, and they might get curious and they might not. And you kind of have to be okay regardless.
Yeah, and there's saying you can't bring others along in your journey. You really do in this particular work, which is what makes it challenging. You really have to do your own work. It's your own journey, not your family's journey, not everyone else's journey. It's your journey. They'll come to it if and when they're ready. But to be the supervisor of someone else's journey is what causes all the, it's where you just bring yourself out of balance trying to supervise and manage everybody else's experience.
Yeah, totally.
So true. You said, I'm just going to keep going because I have some more things written down. And
Yeah.
if we get any really good questions, we'll address those. You had said that there were going to be last week, there were going to be three phases of ascension. The first is a very small core of group of people who are going to physically experience this. The next is a larger group of people. And then finally, the general collective. There are 8 billion incarnated souls in this world.
Mm-hmm.
8 billion are not going to be part of the ascension. I get the feeling it's going to be a very, very, very small number. What are your thoughts on that? And that those of us who feel like we want to, like, for example, I know I'm not telepathic, so I'm not going to be in the first one. I'm probably not going to be the second, not going to be the third. Should I worry about that, or it's all going to happen, it's all going to work out? Or is the ascension going to be are a lot of people going to be included? And is there going to be changes in three-dimensional society? Or is it just this core of people who just go off and create their own little cloud-based universe?
Okay, so many questions in there. The first that I want to just say, you don't need to be telepathic to be part of these cohorts. You don't need to be, you do not need to be connecting and talking with your spirit guides to be part of the first cohort. You just need to be literally, it's the internal processing that matters. That is just a skill. That's like saying, like, you need to be good at woodworking to be part of the first cohort. Like, you don't. So it has to do more with how much have you surrendered? How close are you to finding an internal sense of balance or an internal sense of union? That is what matters. How close are you to letting go fully of the things that you are armoring or blocking your heart with? That's what matters. How close are you to letting go of some of these core fears? How close are you to acknowledging some of these core fears? Because I think, the first cohort is getting pretty close to have really, to fully be finding that internal sense of union. It's really coming through this eclipse period, and then there's going to be integration, but it's mostly people that are, at least on some level consciously doing the work and finding, the thing is, the languaging is going to be different for different people. Within this kind of section of the spiritual field, we have a particular language, but people that, are just, for example, doing like therapy and like psychological practices, but they're not really paying attention to the spiritual as much. They're just as much on this pathway as we are. It's just that they have a different lens, even like different spiritual sects, different spiritual pathways. They're just as much on this pathway as we are. I don't know if you've ever read the Alan Watts book, Become What You Are, but he has this great analogy, and I love it so much, about the finger pointing at the moon. And so all of the different spiritual pathways, or all of the different pathways in general, are all fingers, and like enlightenment or ascension, unity, oneness is the moon. And he says that everybody, spends so much time paying attention to the finger instead of paying attention to what it's pointing at. And
There's another analogy on that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's another analogy exactly on that. Enlightenment is like a wall, and we all want to climb up the wall, so we all have a ladder. And once you make it to the top, it really doesn't matter what ladder you use to get there. It's irrelevant. And to say, well, I got here, through Buddhism, and I got here through that, it's pointless because you missed the whole point. It's not about the ladder. It's not about the path. It's about the end result for yourself.
Exactly. And even the whole concept of reincarnation, from my understanding through the records, it's all about lesson learning. Like, we've all set up to learn particular lessons, but the goal of any one of these lessons is to get us to turn back towards ourselves instead of, clinging onto the external reality. So anyway, all that to say, we're all on the pathway. It's all happening. Okay,
so this first and second, third cohort is not a small cohort. It could be a larger group of people than we're envisioning.
I don't think that it's definitely not going to be all 8 billion people that are ascending, but I also don't think that it's going to be a super small amount of people either. I don't think that we need to be spiritually evolved. I think that we just need to be aware. Okay, so let me just ask them. I want to ask how many individuals are in each cohort. Okay, they gave me very specific numbers. So the first cohort has 150 to 200,000 individuals. The second cohort has 800 to 850,000 individuals. The third cohort has, I think they said 200 million. And then there's the final. So we have 3, and then we have the completion cohort. So November, December is cohort 1. March, April is cohort 2. Next September is cohort 3. And then any time from October to May 2027 is the kind of spectrum of when the frequency is going to be right for the entire collective to shift. Yeah, the person that's saying 144,000, I think that 144,000 is a frequency that needs to be met. I don't think that it's a number of individuals, unless it has to do with how souls are fractaling off of source, which is possible because, okay, it's going to get really convoluted if I answer that question in that way, but it could be to do with like the oversoul groupings if we're talking about 144,000, but I don't think that it's 144,000 people. That's it. I think there's going to be more than that.
All right, we got 100 people here. That's fantastic. Let me share. I'm Alan Gordon, and I'm meeting again for the second time with Taegan Gates. Please, someone type in Taegan's @handle and make sure you're following Taegan. And Taegan, I really appreciate you being here and sharing yourself with us. So if you have any announcements of things you have coming up, and then I'll say 1 or 2 things I have coming up, and then we'll end the commercial and we'll go back to content. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for having me on here again, Alan. I so appreciate it. I love being here. So I'm Taegan. I'm a channel. I channel galactic guides. I channel the earth. I have done readings, but I'm moving more into teaching. And actually today is day 1 of open enrollment for the Mystery School of the Living Earth, where we get really in depth about all of the ancient knowledge that has been utilized through a bunch of different ancient systems, including, Druidic systems, Egyptian, Sumerian, all of the North American indigenous folks are all utilizing that same kind of earth-based energy. And so it's a remembrance that's being brought through. And if you're interested in that, you can go to my website, which is TaeganGatesEnergyArts.com.
Beautiful. For those of you who don't know me, first of all, thank you. And if you're following me, which is great. Keep doing that. But also make sure you're also following Taegan as well. And I want to thank everybody for the likes and the follows. Much appreciated. I have, aside from these lives, I also, every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., we do a deep dive into meditation. And so that's live, open to the public. It's actually on Zoom, so you have to register. If you're not getting the newsletter, I'm pointing to the cloud here, the first link in there. Go ahead and subscribe to the Utopia Collective newsletter, and you'll be invited to that Friday meditation session. Essentially, no matter how far out of balance you get during the week, that Friday, we're going to get you back in alignment. We're going to breathe. We're going to bring you back to alignment. We're going to go deep into a meditative state. And then we're going to find out, we're going to give you the encouragement to keep up with your meditation practice throughout the week. And I do want to talk to you, Taegan, about the need for practice, the need for anchoring. And then also for those of you who are studying with me privately, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., we'll be going deep into Ascension information and deep into the higher dimensional realms, and working through this book, The Cycle of Mind, which is an important book for all of you to start reading, where we talk about the subconscious and start working on the subconscious. So Taegan, I have found that if I don't have a disciplined, consistent morning and evening routine, okay, I'm balanced, meditate in the morning and do it again at night. But as soon as I open my eyes from my meditation, then the day begins, and all the crazy stuff of the day, I call it the roller coaster. You get back on the roller coaster and you're in this third dimensional state. So you have to balance yourself morning and night, in my opinion. And if you're not doing, for example, a nighttime meditation, you're just meditating in the morning, then you're out of balance the whole day and you go to sleep out of balance. If you're only doing your nighttime, then you wake up and you're out of balance. So I think these two are like tethering a tent. You got to anchor them down. And then, of course, you want to find more clarity and peace and, alignment throughout the day as you get better at this. But if you're not doing morning and evening, and I feel like a lot of people, they say they're very spiritual, and I call them unicorns, are really super spiritual, but they don't have a real practice. They're just flying around, and they're just very out of balance, just emotionally, energetically. And they understand spiritual things and they repeat spiritual things, but I believe this is essential, this morning and evening meditation routine, to nail yourself down in balance. How do you feel about that?
It's so funny that we're talking about this, because this is one of the messages that they brought through when I was tuning in. Okay, you might not like what I'm about to say, but I think that there's a balance to be struck within this. So they specifically, the first thing that they said when I tuned in was, rigid structure limits synchronistic experiences. So with that being said, let's get into it a little bit. So I think that, personally, I have a morning and evening routine. So I think that it is important to have some kind of anchor throughout the day, because you're right. Otherwise, you're picking up your phone first thing in the morning, you're going to scroll on TikTok for like 3 hours. Like, no, we're going to put the phone down. We're going to do the morning practice. You're getting yourself in a good way. You're getting your nervous system reset. You potentially have like a general plan for today or for the day. And then at nighttime, you're doing the same kind of like unwinding, recentering. I think that it's essential as well. And I think that the only reason that they brought it up was like, it's the rigid part that they don't like. When we aren't open to flow, then we are not actually acting in alignment. So for example, if, we typically have a specific routine that we're following day by day, but there's one morning where we're really feeling called to be doing something else, but then it's like, no, I need to like have my routine. Then that's where they're like, there are reasons why we're getting intuitively and energetically called to specific things. And so they're saying, yes, have those anchor points, have a general idea of the flow of what's going to work for you to be able to keep yourself in a state of steadiness, in a state of balance for prolonged periods of time, and also be open to the possibility of things, moving and shifting in specific directions as well, and know that actually might be even more beneficial. And then another thing that's been coming through lately too is that one of the most spiritual things that we can do is, enjoy our humanity. I heard this message the other day that was like, there's always another layer to remove. So even when we get to fifth dimensional consciousness, it's like we just keep going. Like there's no end. There's no end goal. And so, obviously these things that are being implemented are for, practical purpose to be able to do things that are ultimately going to benefit us and benefit our experience of this reality, which is of course a positive thing. And also make sure that you are like allowing space and time to just like have fun and enjoy yourself and to like be a human and to not have everything be dependent on outcome and productivity and healing. Allow space.
Agreed. However, agreed. But I'm going to take counterpoint, because if you don't have the self-discipline in the first place, then you don't have a routine to flow with. Like you can't say, oh, I'm called to do something else, because you weren't going to do that in the first place. You have to build, the way habits work is you have to create repetitive cycles. You have to create new routines. Once you have a morning routine and an evening routine, morning and evening, you're right. The end goal is not the morning and evening routine. It's your experience during the morning routine. It's your experience and what you learn and what you're able to anchor and surrender to. It's that feeling. But yes, so it's not so much the rigidity of doing it, but in the beginning, if you don't have the routine, you need the self-discipline. And it's that work in the beginning, work really, really, like if I want to teach you how to play tennis, I was talking about tennis earlier. If I want to teach you how to play tennis, we can't just, put a Post-it on your mirror and say, I'm a good tennis player. You have to actually do something. And if you show up on the court one time and then you don't come back, you're going to not be good. You have to do it again and again and again and again and again and again. And once you get that rhythm going, then I agree. Then it's not about the rigidity. It becomes less about the rigidity and more about just anchoring that practice into yourself. And then you have the freedom to let it go one day or even 2 days. And then you don't necessarily, the practice isn't the thing. It was getting yourself to the point where you have the practice.
I agree. And I think that there is a balance to be struck in it. And I think like from their perspective, it would be like, okay, are you implementing this practice because this is like a passion and an excitement and something that you are genuinely desiring? This thing that you're moving towards is something that's heart-led and heart-based? Or is this something that you are muscling yourself through, but you don't actually want to be doing? And from the like soul perspective, they don't want that energy. They don't want us to be in that energy. However, if it's like discipline on the road to something that is ultimately fulfilling, that's something that we ultimately want, that's different. For example, like if, I'll use a personal example, because before I dropped out was in the midst of getting a psych degree. And then I kind of had like an awakening moment where I was like, I hate this. Why am I doing this? Why am I going through all of these courses? I don't want to be here. And then, and oppositionally, showing up every day and doing channeling is taking the same degree of discipline, but I'm doing it because I genuinely love it. And so there is like a difference with that. And I think that can potentially be a difference in pathway too. So making sure that you find a type of discipline that is supportive of like long-term goals, but also supportive of like daily, like this actually feels good to me. Like if you want to get in shape, if you hate tennis, you're not going to play tennis. If you want to get in shape, you're going to pick a mode that's actually going to like feel right for you. And so it's not forcing yourself into like a specific pathway. And maybe that's the type of rigidity. Because I think that you're right. Like I feel very called to do my morning and evening routines, but it's because I feel like they benefit me and because I feel called to them, not because I'm like trying to like force myself to fit into them so that I can like reach a certain end. And so I think it's more about like the energy that you're coming into it with, because I do think like discipline is necessary. Like if we have to be putting energy forward to move toward the desired outcome that we're looking for.
That is the essence of life. Is the surrendering is important, the clearing space is important, but the doing is important. And your doing needs to be aligned with whatever your true goals are. But if you're not doing the inner work, then you're just acting all the time, 100% of the time without any alignment. But if you don't have the discipline, or like when you're first starting a meditation practice, I have a book on meditation, people start meditation. And then the first time you meditate, your subconscious, your comfort zone, which doesn't meditate, hasn't meditated in 20 years. And so now it doesn't want to meditate. It'll let you do it a few times. But by the third or fourth time, it says, no, we don't do that. Sorry. And all of a sudden you have a million reasons why you don't have to meditate tonight. All valid. 100 reasons. You don't have to do it because of this, because of that. You don't feel like it. You'll do it tomorrow. You already meditated today. And you're fighting against something that's you're holding yourself down. The world, the third dimensional world is holding you down. The people around you are holding you down, and your subconscious comfort zone is holding you down. So if you don't push out, if you don't do the work, I understand you can't be rigid about the work, but you also have to do the work. Because if you don't push out, if you don't push your energy in a new, like I am a meditator. That's it. I meditate every morning. I meditate every night. I meditate every morning. And once you do it for a year, it doesn't matter if you miss a morning or a night because it's engrooved into your subconscious. But until you get to that point, you have to be disciplined. You do have to have a checklist. You do have to be rigid with yourself, and you can't negotiate with, it has to become non-negotiable. So it's this balance between surrendering and wishing and praying and hoping the world's going to be better. Or I just know the world's going to be better. I don't really have to do anything. Well, yeah, you do, because no one else, if you're 40 pounds overweight, nobody cares. Nobody cares if your health isn't good or your relationships aren't good or you're spiritually lost in the wilderness in the third dimensional. You have to pull yourself out. So it's got to be, so here's the male and the female, right? So it's got to be, it's the two parts of the cycle. They're both important.
They're both important. And I think that's I love that you said male versus female, because it is like the masculine perspective versus the feminine perspective. And I think that's why the finding the balance somewhere in the middle is important, because that's us finding that internal sense of union is to really kind of allow space for both of those aspects of self. And what I've noticed, just going off of one of the things that you said, but by the third or fourth time, there's excuses coming up. I find a really good indicator, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, because what I've noticed is if I start a new thing and it feels really good and it feels in alignment for the first one or two times, that's a good indicator if that's something that you should be continually putting discipline and effort into. If you do it the first couple times and you're like, meh, then it's okay, find a different mode. But if it was really good and then you're finding excuses, then that's a good indicator that that's, old programming trying to keep you stuck in the old programming. And then you can kind of move through it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think people think spiritual work is invisible and you can't really see it, feel it. You don't see the results. You don't feel the result. Maybe you feel the results. You don't really see it. It's not visible. I always come back to health. If you want to be healthy, your subconscious comfort zone is saying, no, we don't exercise. Then you go to the gym. Oh, I got all sweaty. I had to change my clothes. That was awful. Right? There's a million, but yet you're going to have to do that. That's a change you are going to have to make. If this is you today and this is the healthy person you want to be tomorrow, you can't just snap your fingers and be healthy. You got to grind it out every day until one day these habits don't seem like work anymore. Now they were a lot, and most people quit right in the beginning, because that's when there's the most disruption, the most discomfort, all the excuses just come flying into from your subconscious. And if you don't push through that, and again, that's why the collective has to be like a magnet. That's why you need other people to draw you up. It's easier to do this with somebody else or with a group of people than just to be a free electron and try to figure it out on your own, because there's so many forces pulling you down. And if you don't do the effort, if you're not rigid with yourself, if you're not self-disciplined, if you don't demand, you probably don't follow college football, but Nick Saban says average is normal. Everybody's average. If you want to do something different, it's not normal. You have to push yourself to a zone that you didn't know about before. As you might say, you have to push yourself into a higher frequency to get into that higher frequency. It's not just a lot of people just shy away from life. They feel like victims. They feel lost and hopeless, and they're waiting for someone to wave a magic wand and make them better. But that's not coming. You've got to do the work yourself.
You do, for sure. And I think it also goes back to the discussion on the ladders to enlightenment, because from personal experience, I'm not like a gym person. However, I will go on a hike any day of the week. I will go to a yoga class any day of the week. It, like, the end result, likely, if I'm like, you know, consistently hiking, consistently showing up for myself in the way that feels good for me, is going to be the same. You know, maybe not like physical definition wise, but health wise will be the same. And so, yes, you do have to be consistent. Yes, you do have to show up for yourself. Yes, you do have to push yourself through potential discomfort and past your comfort zone, because you have to be outside of your comfort zone to grow. But ideally, you're paying attention to what pathway feels good to me, and then being disciplined within that pathway.
And it's also your own journey, right? You can't,
Yeah.
because Alan says I'm supposed to do this, I feel like I didn't do it right. No, that has nothing to do. Like we just talk about health, right? Going to the gym. Well, it doesn't. If I don't say you have to go to the gym to do it, but if you thought I said that, then you feel like, oh well, I just hike and then it's your thing. But yet within your thing, there's still discipline, self-reliance, consistency. You've got to build a consistent routine. You've got to build new rhythms and patterns that kind of weave themselves into your subconscious. So you become that person who loves to take walks, not the person who takes a walk once and then it's a little chilly outside. It's rained 5 hours ago. I'm not sure. Like there's a million reasons why you wouldn't go take the walk. But once you go take the walk, and just because you walked yesterday doesn't mean you're off the hook for today.
Yeah.
You got to walk again, and you got to walk again and again and again, and you got to do your deep breathing. And if you lose touch with these practices, that's the point. That's why I always say when you start meditation, you can't lose touch with that. You can't just let that go, because that's the anchor. That's the inner work that you need to be doing. And if you feel like it's like you just give in to your comfort zone, you're not going to get what you want or where you want to be. You're not going to be at the frequency you want to be at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about consistently showing up and, on the way to consistently showing up, consistently attempting to show up, because I'm sure are many of us in not even just like meditation cycles, but like the various cycles of our lives, it gets reflected. Okay, like I want to get out of this cycle. How do I do that? And then you implement practices, they fall away. And then you try again, and then you implement practices and they fall away. And then at a certain point, because you've reached a certain vibration, you eventually are able to like bring in that sense of consistency. But I actually think it sometimes takes failing to do so a number of times before you've like developed a baseline foundation and baseline frequency that allows you to be at a vibrational match to have that kind of consistent practice in your life. Because to have that kind of consistent practice in your life, you will be at a certain vibrational baseline. And if you're not yet, then it's going to be hard for you to maintain it. And so it's like an incremental process to get yourself up to the point that you're going to be a vibrational match to actually be able to consistently do these things. But you're right in that, like, if daily you're like, okay, I'm consistently like at least attempting, and if I'm not doing it every day, I'm trying, and I'm going to keep coming back to trying, then you're going to be moving up to that baseline frequency ideally a little bit faster than those that aren't attempting to like implement that kind of discipline.
And I think this is really, really important work. And I think everybody listening and all the millions of people aren't listening, this is really important work, because if you don't do the work now, you're not going to be able to anchor more light. You're not going to be able to anchor more wisdom. You're just too dense. And all the knowledge and the wisdom and all this energy is here for you, but it just bounces off of you. Well, I tried, but I couldn't. Well, this is one of those things where you just have to push yourself out of, you can wake up from the matrix, but waking up and then going right back into it isn't good enough. You've got to wake up and step towards the new version of yourself, which means you've got to eliminate your comfort zone, eliminate your excuses, get rid of the, pity me, I just can't do it. You don't understand, my trauma. I can't do it. Well, me pitying you or agreeing with you or saying, oh, it's okay, you'll figure it out one day. How about if I, what can I do to help you get out of that and be more self-disciplined? I guess it's like, the football coach yelling at the kids on the one hand and the team mom giving them cookies. You're doing great. It's
That's
both,
why
and
we
they're
need
both
the
important.
masculine and the feminine. That's why we need both of us, you know what I mean? Because I also think like different like methods work better for different people. Like some people need like a bit of like a softer edge, and some people need, you know, that more disciplined, more, you know, whatever, more disciplined approach. And though that in itself is going to attract like different people to be able to like listen, and, you know, we, from these different perspectives, both will have, you know, groups of individuals that are like, that resonates with me. And it's like, neither is incorrect. It's just like, that's what feels right. That's what feels aligned for that
And that's the
particular.
energy that got me moving. I needed a kick in my ass, or I needed a cookie. You say, hey, you're okay.
Yeah.
Either way, whatever works, right? You got to grab on whatever works.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. I want to talk about something, and this is right up your alley, because I've listened, of course, to almost all of your recordings, and I've taken a lot of notes. But there's a teaching that I want to share with everyone who's listening, and then after that, I'd like your thoughts on it, and maybe if you can get a message on about specifically about what we talk about. This is an ancient tantric teaching. It's called the three veils of duality. There are certain we live in a very, you know, our eyes see only in a very narrow wavelength. There's, you know, we see only a very limited amount of the world, and the unseen is not empty. It's filled with energy. It's filled with creative energy, and we are part of that energy. We just don't see that. We don't sense it with our five senses. So it's called the three veils of duality, and I will do it as kind of like a meditation. But it's the three things that keep you from seeing who you truly are. And this is a meditation that I started doing about maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I don't do it every day, but when I first started talking about discipline and creating a routine, I did it every day, twice a day for about a month or 2 months or three. In other words, I embedded this meditation into myself. Doing the work isn't doing the work, it's embedding that work into yourself. So in the three veils of duality, the first, this is the highest tantric teaching. The first veil of duality is the duality of the veil of separation, believing that you're separate from everything else. There's everything else, and then there's me. And the example I use is, let's say I'm watching a family of deer on the grass, you know, quarter mile in front of me. Well, oh, that's a beautiful sight. I see three deer, and here's me. So I think here's me, and there's those three deer. They're separate. They're separate. But there's someone standing behind me who now sees me and the three deer. And to them, I'm just part of the scene. They're separate, and I'm part of the scene. And on and on and on. You can go all the way down, all the way to the universe. The truth is that we're not separate. We're all connected. I am an essential part of everyone and everything that's ever happened, and everyone and everything that's ever happened is an essential part of me. And that softening and recognizing that we're not separate from another. In fact, we're all in the projection. And if I move, the whole projection moves. If anything else moves, we all move. So we're all connected. We're not separate. And that's the first veil, is the veil of separation. The second veil of delusion or illusion is, I think it's called the veils of duality. The second veil is the veil of difference or special. I'm not different in nature than anything else. I'm not special in nature. We're all made of the same stuff. There is only one true nature, and we are all instantiations of that. So we're not different than anything or special. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call it special. You know, you're not special. You're just like everything else. You're just like everyone else. And we're all made of the same stuff, of the same essence. So there's only one true essence, and I am that essence. You are that essence, whole and complete. And then the third veil of duality is this veil of limitation, that we feel like we're limited. We feel like we have to put forth effort to make something happen, when in fact we're not the doer. We are just like a little tiny contracted version of Source. And through us, Source is creating. But here's the thing, we're both the limited contracted version of Source and the full Source, the full power, the full light, the full energy. And it's this, if you can recognize that you're not separate. It's all part of the picture, and you're just the same as everything else in the picture. And you also are the whole picture. You're not just one little piece of it. And that you have the full power of source flowing through you, the full light, the full energy, and to recognize that you are not limited, but you're just a contracted version of it, but you're also the whole thing. You're both. And that it sounds like just regular words. When you meditate on that, the three veils of, I should probably create an audio on that, script it out and create that. But when you meditate on that for several weeks, it starts to soften your understanding. And that's what this work is about. It's not about linear changes or binary, you're this or that. It's a process of softening and unwinding and surrendering and changing and transforming into that which you really are.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. That's what we're doing. And like the embodiment of those three truths is ascension. It is enlightenment. It is like what we are aiming to find through this incremental process that you're speaking to. And it's interesting because it's exactly what you were saying with like the, bottom up versus like top down approach. Because I'm thinking about like my experiences of this, and it's less about, an incremental softening, but because I'm spending time in these like higher dimensional perspectives, I get these like moments of clarity and I get these like moments of unity. And so there's been several opportunities where I have just on an embodied level experienced myself as source, experienced myself as that oneness, experienced, the guides that I'm interacting with within my records room, within, those higher dimensional planes as different aspects of me that I'm interacting with because they have specific perspectives that will assist me in the unfolding that I have signed up to undertake as this aspect of source consciousness. But yeah, it's like, and through not, it's a bit of both, because it's like, obviously there is this like bottom up approach happening where there is a softening, there is a letting go, there is all of that happening at the same time that the other stuff is happening. And, but those top down experiences allow for like heightened degrees of like anchoring points, because it's like, oh no, I get it. But then obviously you go back into like a more human perspective and you're like, no, but I know what the goal is here now. And so it's like incrementally bringing myself up that way. And like, that's how I've experienced it. I want to see if they have anything else to say about that. They're like, the top-down approach is not necessary for those that have yet to experience unfoldings in such ways, but the heightened understanding that you are a part of the whole, that you have a divine mission, that this divine mission is not something that you have to force or prove, but rather is something that unfolds through you, is a primary mode of experience that is designed to come into the forefront of your minds at some point within these life experiences that you have chosen to undertake. So allow for these knowings to come through in the moments of clarity, as when you allow these experiences to come through you, you'll find that there are heightened levels of sensitivity, that these experiences of oneness come from a softening within yourself. They come from a deepening into your heart space. They come from idealized versions of existence rather than experiencing things from perspectives that allow for, basically they're saying like moving out of more of like a victim mentality and moving into like everything is unfolding exactly how it should, not projecting your experience onto anybody else. And basically the more that you can like soften and surrender into those kind of perspectives, you get that validated through your experience. And so when you continue to expect that, you're supported, that you're trusted, and doing what you can to let go of the fears that stop you from being able to fully step into and fall into that kind of trust, fall, surrender with the divine, then you get shown the truth of those truths. And so it's kind of like you have to take the step off the precipice first. You have to like actually initiate the trust fall for reality to, you know, show you that you're right, basically.
I like that. And that's what I really like about your channeled messages is I've said this before, within 30 seconds, I'm looking into myself. And that's really, really important because the answer isn't out there. The answer isn't going to be explained to you, or it's really in here. And like you say, you use the phrase all the time, becoming more of who you already are, releasing everything that's not that. And as using your words again, working through all these different frequencies so you can deal with all of that, so you can learn how to push that, and become a higher frequency and start to work through these lower frequencies, let go of them and become a higher frequency. I think that's really important. That's really important. And to see it from the perspective of like receiving this information from entities or knowledge or wisdom that isn't anchored to the third dimension, because everything we talk about, everything we kind of, when you're first starting in this, you're kind of talking about your old life and using that as the frame of reference. But you have to stop doing that. You have to stop using your old life and what you were programmed and the old third dimensional density as the frame of reference. And you have to just kind of, the way I look at it is this, and when I wrote the book, The Cycle of Mind, this is what I was really trying to say. We are traveling through time connected to this subconscious dense programming that we have. And as you're traveling through time, and people have told me when you read this book, at some point in the book, you realize the mountain keeps moving, but that's not who you were. You can separate yourself from that. And now you're free to create new mountains. You're free to start looking at the future, not living in the past and anchoring to the past. And that's a really important moment when you realize that your frame of reference is all off. And that's, again, why I appreciate you and invite you here and want to talk with you more, because your frame of reference is up there. And it says, well, yeah, but wait a minute, I can't listen to that because I'm stuck. Well, you don't have any choice. I just have to listen to what you're saying. And that's another way that I can let go of the density and my old frame of reference. To me, it's all about what you put in your mind and your frame of reference. And if you reference everything, your trauma, your childhood, you don't understand. It's impossible. My husband doesn't want me to do this. All this stuff that you get, all you're doing is walking with your mountain of problems.
Yeah.
And you've got to let them go and you stay here. And now you can start programming different things. And this ascension is, as we said earlier, this is really important work. Don't put it off till next week or next month or next year. Start doing this work now in whatever way you feel is right. But most importantly, a morning and an evening balancing session. Don't even call it meditation, just an alignment, a centering once in the morning, once at night at least. Because if you're not doing that, you're just not on the journey. You're just not able to anchor what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree. And the other thing that I want to add about trying to let go of the mountain that you're carrying, or because people get really attached to stories as part of their identity, and they don't want to let go of the things that they believe have made them who they are. And the thing that I always say about this is that it's not even necessarily important to let go of the story. It's important to let go of the energy that's attached to the story. Because if we're carrying, heartache, pain, heaviness in our bodies, but also in like our energy bodies, then that's what's continuing to create manifestations in our external reality. If we are holding a particular energy in our field, in our energy field, in our auric field, it has to manifest externally. And so even if we are through the mind attempting to let go of these past situations, but in our heart or in wherever else we're holding it, it's probably, it has to do with the column of energy centers, and it's not always in the heart. Sometimes it's in other places. Could be root, could be crown, could be wherever. but wherever it is that we're holding a particular energy, that energy has to continue to manifest. And so you can all day long be like, no, I'm just not going to pay attention to these old things. But if you haven't done the work, if you haven't done the clearing, if you haven't done the sitting with these emotions, if you haven't acknowledged these things, then you're going to continue to manifest these things. If you have a fear of scarcity and you're trying to trust fall, but you haven't acknowledged the fear of scarcity, you're going to continue to manifest the scarcity because you haven't actually acknowledged the thing that needs to be acknowledged for you to experience a different reality.
Got to clear it all out.
Yeah.
And that is a process. You know, it's something, you know, you talked about your journey. It takes time. It just takes time. You have to want to clear it out. You have to want to ascend. You have to want to be at a higher vibration, and then you got to do the work. And it's like we talked about, clearing out, surrendering, letting go, and aligning your actions more positively. I talk about like unplugging, like a switchboard operator, the old switchboard operators. We're all plugged into the third dimension, and we're aware of everything. And so you've got to start unplugging. And I say, like, what does it mean when I say unplug? You're unplugging your nervous system. The world is still there. It's still happening, but you're no longer it's not getting inside you anymore. So you're unplugging your nervous system, but that's only the first part of it. Then you've got to plug your nervous system into more positive inputs, into your meditation, into your health practice, into peace and alignment and balance and kindness and generosity. You've got to like consciously, intentionally, that's the cycle, right? You've got to pull away from the things, but then plug into more positive things. Because if you just pull away, and that was the Buddhist thing, just be completely empty and have nothing, and that's not who we are. We are creatures of action and habit and cooperation. We've got to plug ourselves into these positive vibrations. And the fact, just for the folks that are here, just being here means you're plugged into something more positive. You're plugged, you're open to higher vibrational frequencies. You're open to what's going to happen next, and you're unplugged as much as you can. And I say, just grab like 1,000 of them at a time and just yank them out. It's still there. You know, it's not just my nervous system. I'm giving my nervous system a break. I don't have to worry about like I still see the news stories, but to me, I see it like through a window. I see it, but it doesn't agitate me. And someone said, like in the comments, well, don't you get angry? I could. It's enough there to be angry about, for sure. But that's not ascension. That's not enlightenment. I'm looking at a clock, 12 o'clock. Keep yourself plugged into 12 o'clock. And when you look over at 9 o'clock and you get all agitated about it, you become that.
Yeah. And we are the creators of our reality. So wherever we're placing our energy is the reality that we're choosing to feed energy into, and ultimately is the reality that we are going to be experiencing for ourselves. So yeah, I could, put all of my energy into what's going on in the news, or I can pay attention to the fact that I'm seeing a bunch of people like awaken spiritually right now, that I'm seeing positive growth within myself, that, it's sunny outside. There's lots of beautiful things that are happening. And so it's like very important to be cognitive about like where you are actually placing your energy. But I really love actually, the unplugging metaphor from the perspective of the nervous system, because that's so spot on. And I think that nervous system health and regulation is really like the root of being able to make some of these shifts. Because if there is like some kind of like surface level shifts that are going to be that are going to assist us in really kind of increasing our vibration or frequency, sometimes those things aren't attainable until we have gotten ourselves out of a state of activation. And a lot of us have been programmed into a state of activation from like early childhood. And so it is this like really kind of deep deconditioning and unlearning and relearning process to kind of like get ourselves just into a baseline. And so, and that's the beauty of like actually implementing those things on a daily level and on a daily basis. And I think that, going back to what I was saying too, where it's like, you kind of will probably experience those initial positive results where it's like, oh, this feels really good. And then, the ego mind might be like, no, I don't really want to do that anymore. But you got to stick with that initial, like, oh, that feels really good, because that is what is going to assist you in being able to be at a new baseline for you to be able to implement these new practices so that you can be looking at the things looking at the ascension pathway versus looking at the fear-based pathway, because if you're constantly in a state of nervous system activation, or you haven't done the unplugging to get yourself into a specific nervous system baseline, then you're going to be programmed to look at the fear-based stuff anyway. Like if you're in a state of activation, you're going to be paying attention to the things that are going to potentially continue to activate the nervous system, because that's what we're programmed to do on a biological level. That's not even a spiritual thing, that's biological.
Yeah, and I think people really want the answer out there, and they want someone to tell them, but Ascension isn't out there. It's not the aliens, it's not the news, it's not anything out there.
Yep.
It's completely reversing your awareness to the inside, finding your own balance, and then unplugging so you can retract your nerves into yourself instead of always be everything's bothering you and trying to control everything. It's really an inner work. I want to say one other thing. Another topic that I want to bring up. First of all, let me mention I'm with Taegan Gates. If someone would be kind enough to put at Taegan Gates down in the, please follow her. I really appreciate those of you who are following me. That's wonderful. But I also want to make sure that you're following Taegan. She is a phenomenal channeler, and there's 100 channelers, 1,000 channelers on TikTok and everywhere else. But and I've said this to you before, Taegan, what I like most about your videos, and I love them when they come out, is within a few seconds of your video, I'm looking inward and I'm doing the inner work. And that's really, really important. Thank you, Chels. Appreciate that. Please follow Taegan, follow me, love you guys all, and subscribe to the newsletter on Substack. That would be much appreciated. Tell me about... We talked a little bit about this concept of New Earth last time, but we didn't really get into it really deeply. A lot of people have read the book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda. Okay, well, his teacher was a guy named Yukti Goswami, if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, and his teacher wrote a book in 1894, 1896. About this something called a yuga. It's a 24th. He wrote about the cycles, the astrological cycles, and there's something called a yuga, where every 24,000 years, the Earth itself, the planet itself, raises its vibration, and it begins to separate and split. And if you could look back in time and take a snapshot, you would see these old Earths and a constantly regenerating, renewing Earth. And the theory, some of the alien theory, is that a lot of the aliens are coming from old versions of Earth that have died out, and they're coming back to get their DNA and all that stuff. But there's this concept of the Yuga, and that we, at that time in 1896, were at the beginning of the separation, and apparently takes a couple hundred years. But tell me about, is that something that's familiar to you, about this literally physical, a new vibrational version of Earth, and the older Earth lowers vibration and eventually becomes cold and dies?
Okay, I want to ask the guide specifically, because the yugas are something that I'm familiar with, and the idea is that we're moving into the golden age. Let me just ask them specifically, though, because from my understanding, this is the first time that the Earth is moving into a completely new incarnation. This is a new experience for the Earth and for the galaxy. So that doesn't mean that, we haven't moved into a golden age before. I just don't think that it's ever been at this vibrational level. Even when we were existing in Atlantean times, we are going to be existing past Atlantean frequency, which is crazy. Just first of all, that's a lot. That's nuts. Let me just ask them about that, though, to make sure that I'm speaking accurately. Okay. The yugas are shifts of environmental change that have happened throughout the course of the Earth history. There have been several ancient civilizations that have been promoted and then forgotten through the process of these ages. This does not mean that there has never been this level of vibration on this planet before. However, it has been quite some time since these vibrational frequencies have been allowed to exist within this earthen plane. This is the first time that the earth itself is moving into a new state with the collective that resides upon her. She is going to be exercising her right as an individual sovereign entity to move into a vibrational state that is unbeknownst to her, as many of you do through the experiences of moving through incarnations on your planet. Okay, so let me just ask then. So when was the last time that we had like a vibrational match to what we're going to be at? Okay, she was at this vibrational frequency when she was first incarnated. However, through the modes of experience that were undertaken, there were a series of frequency breakdowns that led to consecutive numbers of failed attempts to reach this new energetic baseline. The yugas you speak to are nothing but seasonal shifts within the energetic matrix of the Earth's coding. This is the next opportunity to allow for this heightened expansion of consciousness to come through. There have been other opportunities for this heightened expansion of consciousness to come through, but the vibration has not been met, so these civilizations were left to crumble. Okay, so that makes sense to me. That's what has happened every time we've had the opportunity to move into the golden age. We haven't had the frequency baseline be high enough to actually have the entire collective shift. So this is just the next opportunity where it's energetically aligned for this to be happening. And this is just the closest we've ever been. And we're going to make it this time.
It sounds like that. That's really good news. I say it like this, you know, we don't just live in any time. This is a very special time in history, and for a couple of reasons. Number one is for the advantages that we have, the access to information, the access to knowledge, the access to be able to communicate with one another. This is unparalleled in human history. So we have to take advantage of everything that we have in this incarnation, in this time. And it's not just any old time. The earth itself is ascending. The electromagnetic waves, there's ascension energy coming, there's ascension wisdom. And if the earth is ascending, that means we are ascending. We don't just live on the earth. We actually are the earth. We are that electromagnetic energy. That's us. That's us. And if there's ascension energy coming, that is for us. But if we're not doing the work and we're densely tied to this three-dimensional construct, the ascension energy just kind of bounces off of us. It's there, but we don't appreciate it. So it's really incumbent on all of us to start to unplug as best we can and open ourselves, you know, raise our own cellular vibration rate, raise our own frequency through health practices, through meditation practices, through visualization, however, so we can start to anchor more light individually, so that that light that we're anchoring individually is great for us, makes us healthier, happier, more abundant, but it's all part of the ascension. And I think it's really, really important that people I just keep saying it, like, stop, don't waste another day. Don't walk around the swimming pool wondering if the water's nice, you know, just jump in and get wet, start swimming. Everyone else is going to have fun. You're not going to have fun walking around the side and making your decision. You've just got to move towards this ascension and move towards this inner elevation. And like we talked about, it's a beautiful thing, but it's work. You got to, you know, drive yourself out of your comfort zone. You have to be consistent. You have to find an accountability partner. You got to do the work every day. And even when it gets boring, you got to keep doing the work. But it's a really special time in history. And I really invite everyone to do this work, to be part of this ascension.
And the reality is, like, doing the work just makes your life experience easier for you. Like, life is going to give you the circumstances that are necessary for your ascension regardless. But if you're doing the work, then you're getting yourself clearer faster. You're getting yourself out of this experience that, you know, certain denser experiences that would need to manifest externally. If you're consciously bringing your energy and your attention inward and paying attention to those things in that way, you're going to experience it either way. But if you wait for it to manifest on the external, it might be a lot more uncomfortable than if you're just consciously bringing the work inward and doing the unraveling on that level.
It's a beautiful thing. Let's look at the, see if there's any comments or questions that came up. I'm just going to go back. Just a reminder, I'm with Taegan Gates, and please make sure you're following Taegan. She's a channeler, and she's my favorite. And I really enjoy talking with her. All right. Where are we? 218. Let's do one last exercise. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions? Do you have any meditations that you do without not the channeling, but just your own prep work, your own clearing space?
I used to do a lot more than I do now, but I do have one meditation that kind of aids in building a bridge. Well, it makes you to be the bridge between heaven and earth. So it creates a channel of energy between you and higher degrees of consciousness, and then really kind of anchors you down into the core of the earth. So I would be open to doing that if you were interested
in. Share it with us. That would be great.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'll get everybody to just take a comfortable position, closing the eyes if it feels good for you. Beginning by taking a few nice deep breaths. On the inhale, filling the lungs completely. On the exhale, releasing any and all tension from the body. Continuing to breathe and just shifting your awareness to encompass the entirety of your body all at once. Just noticing all of the energy that's existing within your vessel. Not trying to shift or change anything, just noticing and maybe breathing into any areas that are experiencing increased sensation. And just allowing everything to be there. And taking a few more breaths here. And on your next inhale, beginning to shift your awareness into your heart space. You can do that purely through intention, or you can place two hands on your heart. Just noticing the subtle vibrations that are existing in the heart space. Noticing if it feels expansive or contractive. Just greeting your heart. Maybe you haven't said hi to your heart in a while. And taking a couple more breaths into the heart space. And on your next exhale, as you're breathing out, you're going to envision, and if you can't envision, feel a beam of white light coming out through your crown, reaching up into the sky, going higher and higher and higher through the atmosphere, through the stars and space. Until it eventually moves so high that it has entered into a field of space where all information exists, where your highest vibrational guides can effortlessly communicate with you, where your higher self is able to step through and connect with you with ease. Maybe feeling their presence, feeling their warmth, noticing if you're feeling any feelings of expansion or love. That is the presence of these beings. That is your connection to these realms. And with that channel nice and solid, we're going to make our way back down the channel, in through our crown, down through our heart, through our central channel, and then to the base of our spine, our root chakra. And from the root, you can either envision another beam of light, or you can envision roots coming down and out through the base of the spine. They can come down and out through your feet. And then they're going to go deep, deep down into the earth, through all the layers of the earth. Continuing to go further and further down until that beam of light eventually connects with the core of the earth, or until those roots can begin to wrap around the earth. And bring through more and more and more of that light until it feels nice and sturdy and steady. Really feeling that strength, that stability, that groundedness. And then up from the core of the earth, you're going to inhale a beautiful, clear, green light up through the roots, or up through that channel of light into your body. And then up and into your heart. Allowing that clear, green, high vibrational light to fill the heart space, visualizing it swirling. And then you're going to call down the energy from those high vibrational planes, bringing through a bright, clear, white light down through that upper channel, pulling it down, and again, bringing it into the heart space, and allowing those white and green energies to swirl and mix and merge in the heart. Allowing yourself to become that bridge, that channel, that conduit between heaven and earth. And from this space in the heart, just imagine that this light within your heart is growing, creating a bubble of light around you. And just imagine that it's growing and growing outward, further and further out, past your room, past your house, your dwelling, encompassing your neighbor's house, your town, stretching so big that it eventually encapsulates the whole world in this bubble of light and love, connecting you deeply with everything around you, all of existence, feeling your interconnectedness, feeling and maybe seeing how things weave in divine order, that there is no need to push, no need to force. All that is needed is to let go, to accept, to find trust within yourself, and then trust in the divine, allowing that wholeness, that completeness to be ignited from within. Finding peace and clarity now in the heart space. Accepting this heart space as your home, where your spirit connects to and projects from. Being here with yourself now and knowing that there is nothing that can be found outside of you that cannot be found right here in this moment. And when you're ready, you can bring your awareness back into your body, noticing sensations, noticing how things have shifted or changed. And when you're ready, beginning to open the eyes.
That's beautiful.
How was that for everybody? So nice.
I like that. And thank you for sharing that with us. That's awesome. That was
My
pretty
pleasure.
Yeah.
That's the place that if you desire to connect with guides and attempt to create that clarity of channel, being in that heart space, if you're asking a question from within that heart space, usually you will get some kind of answer, whether it be, again, through your own internal monologue, whether it be through a feeling. The heart is our ultimate portal, our ultimate gateway to higher knowledge and higher understanding. And when we utilize it for the tool that it is, aside from it just being like our heart home, this is where, our soul essence lies, which is why it feels so good. Like the heart energy is the energy of our soul. So when we're talking about removing layers and becoming that which you are, it's becoming this heart-based energy because that is our core essence. And so when we're connecting in with our core essence, it immediately elevates our frequency. That's why, the practice is about being in the heart, because it immediately elevates your frequency because this is who you are. And so when you're spending time in that frequency, it allows a clearer channel of energy to come through for you, clearer messages to come through for you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Those of you who are giving me gifts, thank you, but I think you really want to give them to Taegan. Taegan is my guest today, and I really appreciate it. Taegan Gates is a channeler, and that was a beautiful meditation. And I would just tell others, the real benefit of a meditation like that comes from repetition, from softening yourself to that experiencing, immersing yourself in it again and again and again, because each time you go into that meditation, you're different. You're in a different mood, a different energy, and then you get back to that same thing. And eventually over time, it becomes part of you. And that's something that that I am very head-centered. And my personal journey is this constant reminder to be more heart-centered. And that was a beautiful meditation for me.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Which brings me to that. I'll ask you offline, Taegan, but you don't have to answer now. But I can post that, or actually give you the recording of that meditation if you want. I'll chop it up and give it to you, and if you let me post it on mine, and you can post it on yours, so people would have it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I appreciate your generosity in sharing that with us.
Of course.
So, you said something earlier. I just want to close on this one thing. I want everyone to. I'm a believer that if you having a problem, or you have a goal, or you have some problem you want to solve, or some objective you want to achieve, I'm a believer that when you write it down, you're 50% of the way there. If you're clear about what it is and you can be clear enough to write it down, you've already solved half the problem. Now it's just a matter of the rest of the solution coming to you. If you are interested, if you want to be part of the ascension, and I don't mean Taegan and I are the ascension and part of what we're doing. No, if you want to be part of what's happening in the earth, and you're tuned in here, right? You're checked in, so you all fit into this category. You've got to be. You want to start to be specific about, without being too specific, right? You you want to be specific about your goals. Like, I want to build more meditation habits. I want to build more time in my day for the specifics of the meditation are less important than the showing up for it and the being there and the balancing and the aligning. So to take a meditation like that, or any meditation that speaks to you and resonates with you, you want to build a habit of repetition. And you want to become that meditation. It's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to anchor it. And that's another thing to repeat it over and over again, because you're always experiencing, this, anytime you do anything, you read a book the second time, you get a whole different understanding of it. It's the same thing with a meditation. So you want to make sure that you have some discipline, you know where you're going, and you are moving, plugging in, I think is the right word. Maybe, plugging into these higher dimensional frequencies. And just the very fact that you're here now means that you're plugged in, and it's your intention, and there you go. So
yeah 100%. I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I think that that's perfect. Adding the things that allow for you to be bringing in higher vibrational things into your daily reality is going to bring you there eventually.
and it softens you to the idea, and you experience it, then you experience it again, and you're different. So I'm really glad that people are tuned in and they're on this vibe. It feels really good for me. I speak for Taegan also. It feels really good when folks are interested and grateful for the work that we do. But I will also tell you, and I know I speak for Taegan as well, we don't do this for the money. We do this because it's a calling. That we put ourselves out there because we want to help you. Because in helping you, we grow, we learn, we ascend ourselves. The more we can teach, the more we share, the more we ourselves grow. So we do it selfishly, no, but you do get benefit from it. But it's really, we want to open the door for as many people as possible. Open the door wide. There aren't any more barriers you have to cross. You're already across the threshold. Now it's just a matter of blissing out in this inner peace, understanding it more, experiencing it more, spending more minutes of the day in alignment than just being out of alignment forever. You have to pull yourself into alignment morning, night, as much as you can during the day. And the more you do that, the more you open, and the more you're able to anchor.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So we're all going to the ascension. You don't have to be telepathic to be part of the first, second, and third wave. That's a big relief.
Nope.
Let's say.
No. We all have a particular role to play, which is pretty much exactly what you were just saying. Like, we do this because it's a soul calling, and everybody has a soul calling, and we are guiding the way and acting as guideposts or signposts for this particular point in the pathway, and it's guiding you to be where you are meant to be, and to be the guidepost that you are meant to be for others within this as well.
Awesome. Perfect time to close. Let me not divert from that. Thank you, Taegan. We've done our 90 minutes. I really appreciate you. Well, thank you. Hopefully we can do this. Hopefully we can do this again. And
totally. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I think people are enjoying it, and people are hanging out. So awesome. Thank you so much, Taegan. Appreciate you all. Everyone have a great day. If you're confused about what's going on here, just message me on TikTok and I'll get back to you. But make sure you're following Taegan as well. And
I do. Do I have time to just message one thing because I totally didn't the last time that I had the moment. I am offering a channeling basics course this Thursday. It's $33.33. You can find it through the link in my bio. I also offer other courses. And if you're interested in any of the things that I offer, you can also just feel free to shoot me a message or any other things that I said. You can also feel free to message me on here as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Love you all. I really appreciate you all being here. And thank you, Taegan, for sharing so generously. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. So great to be here. All right.
Take care.
Talk to you later.